Welcome, everybody. The mud flood was Armageddon. That's right. The mud flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. Unless they tell you it's a flat earth nation at the golden age past and you have an orphan trained brain and things like that. The Lord it moves in mysterious way. I was making a video and I was going to make, kind of two topic video. Got through the first topic and all of a sudden it was an echo fest. I messed up somehow, but I decided to nip it in the bud and come back and talk about the utopias of the short season type of a situation. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with showing the disclaimer. There it is. You didn't even go, oop, there it is. And so now we'll just jump right into it. Let's look at what we got here. There's the thumbnail. Let's look first. Did we really build an entire civilization on top of the graves of the old world? I believe so. This is something to add into your file in your brain.
Wanted too much compensation from the city to move it. So the Couch Mausoleum is the only grave left in Lincoln Park?
The only visible grave is the Couch Mausoleum. There may be thousands of bodies still left.
Helen Sclair calls herself Chicago's cemetery lady. She's made a career out of finding out where Chicago's bodies are buried, and some of those places will really surprise you. For example, long before our famous water tower was built in 1869, this was the site of Chicago's very first town cemetery.
What?
Now, there certainly aren't any bodies left there.
Oh, for pity's sakes. When every time they dig a sewer or a street or a basement or anything they want to dig in that particular land, all of those fancy stores and all of those...
On North Michigan Avenue?
Yes. All the way up to the Drake. It was the first formal burial site in the city of Chicago.
The desecration of graves, and I lived for my father moved us when he was a union electrician. They were going to build what they called nuclear powerhouses, 5 within 20 miles of this one union. So he transferred there away from the desert and the mountains in Arizona to Chicago. And this was the hidden Chicago. The cemetery was a good one. Motor Row, ghost signs, murals, humans that before there was bowling alleys.
Became popular in 1841 as a sort of legal loophole. The European game of 9 pins had been outlawed in Connecticut because it attracted too many gamblers. Bowlers got around the law by adding another pin. Chicago played a part in bowling history. The first national tournament was held here in 1901. But the low-paid pin boys were a liability. They had a reputation for being undependable and downright ornery.
Doggone you pin boys.
Only 2 cars finished. The winner, Frank Duria, completed the course in about 8 hours, averaging 7.3 miles per hour. This boulder in Washington Park marks the spot where a tree once stood, but not...
Wow, everybody's got some weird history.
It must
Chicago?
have astonished fairgoers, because in 1893, electric streetlights were still a novelty. There are a number of other lights left from the fair that have been moved south to the Beverly neighborhood where they're still in use.
Utopias coming up.
Old railing is a relic of the fair?
This bridge holds a couple of little-known secrets.
This was at the World's Columbian Exposition.
Right here, this thing.
Yeah, but it wasn't here. It's actually a recycle from somewhere else. So pieces got moved around all over.
So underneath the bridge are some real old relics, huh?
Sure, but actually this is even older than the fair.
Older than the fair? How is this possible?
And here's this low wall that kind of curves around under the bridge.
Kind of like a little nice
It's older than the fair.
handrail going across. So you're really retracing the steps of people who were seeing the fair years ago. And then all of a sudden,
Wow. Well, this is the biggest living relic of the fair, right?
Today,
Utopias.
to
What?
make it both literally and figuratively.
So I got to get some more Chicago. This is the Harold Washington Museum. You know, when he died, he famously was wearing women's lingerie. He was a bachelor, but he supposedly had a beard girlfriend. It was weird, man. They had a couple of Jane Burns and him, but it was mostly Richard Daley and then his son, Richard Daley, that for like all 40 years I was there, they were mostly the mayor's boss, is what they were called.
Over the top.
Just like the girl underwear. This is what I wanted you to see, though. This is where I got the idea to show you. How many utopias are there?
Take a look at Zion, Illinois from the heavens above, and you might notice it was laid out in the shape of the British flag.
What?
The street names are drawn from the Bible, and all roads lead to a church at the center of town. These are the lasting legacies of Zion's founder, a British-born faith healer named John Alexander.
British-born faith healer. Total charismatic, into the money, lived in a mansion. This was the flat earth capital of Illinois.
Dowie. Dowie attracted a following in Chicago at the 1893 World's
How is this possible? What are these Jewish symbols doing? What is going on?
Fair, where he claimed to cure everything from convulsions to crossed eyes. He preached that these ailments were the work of Satan. And Dowie promised to lead his followers away from evil once and for all by building them a heaven on earth.
I've been there. I used to live by it. I drive up there, kind of like where Great America is. This is his house.
In this mansion at the center of town, filled with the finest furnishings money could buy. In the end, Zion's church-controlled economy was a failure. Within just a few years of its founding, the town went bankrupt. With creditors breathing down his neck, Dowie skipped town to us.
You town skipper. What else you got weird in Chicago? Go.
Were installed with a teaching purpose.
Now today, we wouldn't interpret history the way they did in 1912 when these were done.
For example,
one of the murals says the treachery of the Indians. It's kind of written across it, and that's the way the Native Americans that lived in this area before were portrayed. We certainly wouldn't.
Did you see the swastika?
Today, we wouldn't interpret history the way they did in 1912 when these were done.
See the swastikas here? I'll show you closer up.
for example,
one of the murals says the treachery of the Indians. It's kind of written across it, and that's the way the Native.
See how that's the swastikas? Everything was swastika, but then they, not the treachery of the Indians. They found these buildings, and they did have some talented painters with some unusual, it's a swastika. What else is weird in Chicago before I show you the utopias?
tour. To get there, Paul takes me back up top to a different shaft where we descend again, this time in an elevator.
All right, here we are.
These passages are carved out of solid limestone, technically Niagaran dolomite.
Look at this, fossils. 300 or 400 million year old sea creatures.
You don't have to believe that. I don't believe that, but you're underground.
This rock is what's
It's a
left
good job
behind
this guy
from a
has.
warm, shallow ocean that covered this area hundreds of millions of years ago.
Oh,
We follow a series of hallways through watertight doors
This is a bunker. I'll show you the bunker.
in a bunker?
My God.
Right in here.
until we find what we're looking for.
Oh,
Pumping station.
man.
This massive pumping station lifts hundreds of millions of gallons of water from deep tunnel to ground-level sewage treatment plants. Imagine
I wonder if the pestilence is, when is that going to start? These in every city, they have them. They're going to break down, and it's going to be like, oh no, My bunker hub's not pumping millions of gallons a day.
Compete against trucks, and buildings switched from coal heat to gas.
So the system simply outlived its usefulness.
Since
You know,
flood,
these men and women all had jobs, but at night when they went home, you know what they wanted? Utopia.
cost $40 million to restore this theater to its former
No, they found it. It might have spent some money, but it was the mafia's brainwashing us. Who wants popcorn?
Popcorn before was more almost like something you'd have over a campfire or a fireplace. You put it in the fire, they would heat unevenly, half of them would burn, some of them would pop.
When I was dating my wife, she was going to school at the Valparaiso University in Indiana, the home of Orville Redenbacher. So I did get a little lesson in the whole deal there. Thanks for sticking around. Nobody's saying I can't hear you. So we're going to get into the Utopias now. Thank you for your patience on that. History of Chicago. I had it pulled up. I wanted to play it. First, we'll look at Bishop. We're going to somewhat, these are supposed to be grouped in their era. 1800s, founded 1886, religious dissidents from Sweden. Illinois Prairie. Ran for a little while. Everybody's looking for a utopia. Was the leading, but they had Swedish in Galesburg, Rock Island. I mentioned before, you know, only recently has English become a usable international language because even in the United States, English was spoken so different by so many people with, you know, you got the y'all thing going on. Same words, totally different. With aluminum and aluminamium, you know, from Great Britain, it was a universal problem. I know that RJ doesn't like that word, and I don't like to use it, but, you know, I'm spitballing it. We got the Bishop Hill. 20 great, 200 great places. They love it. What are they? No real. What were they? What was their problem? What were they looking into here? They had a valuable collection of folk art paintings by Olaf. No. This is somebody they made up from the Wizard of Oz type situation. There is no way. Nobody's going to do a self-portrait of themselves like that. Utopian religious community. The Swedish pietist, radical pietist. I'm not sure where that is. That's one utopia. We can't go through them all. There was a Utopia, Ohio. It makes a good thumbnail. What do you believe in there? You're going to name your town Utopia. Okay, he's one of these guys. I looked that up. Phalansteer type of building for utopias, consisting of, 500, 2,000 people. Utopias was a business. They were sending them over here. Communism in 1848 sent millions of people to America. Famines. 4 years writings. A lot of these were novels. Writings inspired the readers to create their own utopias. Within 3 years, it broke up, but they got the people to the United States. They probably went and joined another one, but they were all headed towards the utopian Theosophic Rosicrucian John Birch Society that is the Jesuits. They're looking for mutualism. This is one of the utopia type of situation that branches off of anarchist, because we're going to bump into a few utopias that were anarchs. Its roots are in the utopian socialism of Robert Owen and Charlie Fournier, and system of labor notes, unequal exchange, abolition of it. It was getting to where you couldn't even afford good servants. You couldn't have, slaves were costing a fortune. You had to feed them. Things were rough back then for these people. What would you got? A utopia? Utopian? Hey, you look like you ought to be in the movies as one of those guys that could punch a cow and knock it out. It's like looking in a mirror. So Owenism, you'll see a lot of that. It was a big deal, looking for anything but Christ. They didn't want to do the Bible. They had to have a mutualist vision. Now these guys, still famous, making the silverware, flatware, socialists. John Humphrey Noyes. This was like, I think this was a sex cult too. This is one of the, based on the free love, a belief called perfectionism. The community believed that Jesus had already returned in 70 AD, making it possible for them to bring about Jesus's millennial kingdom themselves. See, so post-millennial Calvinists, group marriage, group sex, a form of eugenics, a very much into the eugenic white culture. The women started teaching the teenage boys how to have sex and not ejaculate. So, and what they considered it, no, we're just teaching you the new way you have to live your life until you want to breed with a special girl to make a special baby. Don't buy we're just a Christian people, come to our restaurant and buy our silverware. Wrong. Free love. They like the free love. No such thing. If I ever have any situation where there's a community of believers, it won't be a utopia. And I will be that guy shaking my fist going, no, you're not going to be trying to pull that crap around here. Honestly, a sickening group. Now, utopian socialism. This is, like I showed you this word. I believe it's phalanstier. But that's almost like the bat wing. And this was designed by the utopian Charlie Fournier. You might have heard me mention him. A lot of people getting utopias for a lot of reasons, moving people around, Freemasons, join it. We can do it. Get them over there. Where I live in Alamosa, everybody was pissed when they got here because they promised them the moon, and they're going like, what am I doing in the world's highest, driest desert? Coldest, highest, driest desert. I'm not trying to hide it. It gets cold around here in the winter at night. Oh, man. Utopianism. Group marriage. I'm not saying they started it in the Christian utopian cult theophysist type things, but they're still into it today. It's anything but Christ. It's that God lives in you. You're your own Jesus. It's one man, one wife for life. The stir culture, huh? The first positive eugenics. And eugenics is where you hate black people and Indians, Mexicans, anybody. Wow. So that's really it. They had 58 children they thought were going to be perfect, I guess. In his 1883 book, Inquiries into Human Faculty and Its Development, Galton noted that his new term, eugenics, was a suitable replacement for the older term, vericulture, which he had invented. But he's not going to stick with it when you got a better word, eugenics. Is anybody reading that sentence? What is that? That's not how, I just don't know what's going on with the world today. This was the thing. The fathers and mothers started training the kids early by teaching them sex. I kid you not. And people buy it right up into, it was a travesty what the FBI did to the people in Waco. They were idiots. They let David Koresh have sex with their children, some of them did. Why do people do this? Why do they fall for these guys? They're messed up. They're not one called, two chosen, three faithful. They're itchy ears gonna, do anything but Jesus. They're gonna show the world, I found a better way. And call it a utopia. All of these guys, Charles Finney, Second Great Awakening, it was all fake. Not only the Trinity, but the whole charismatic part of it. The Methodist view of it, that you choose God, it's a synchronistic act. Went to Yale. I wonder if they had to pose naked. Did that Oneida one. So we'll move on from the Oneida. Who are these guys? Another American socialist utopian. Acarians? French followers of the author. He wrote a book that became popular. They said, we should build a town like that for real. One of the authors, journalists, politicians, attempted to put economic and social theories into practice. Moved to the United States from France, established a series of these communes in Texas, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, California. And it split, but hey, I wonder if they got into making glass. That's not Corning, Illinois. Where do they make the Corning glass? Etienne Tabier, middle class, gotta have it. Socialist utopias. The Amana colonies. Now, I'm not sure if they admit to being a free love group, but I've heard there's some weird things going on. They east, high, middle, south. Have you ever been to their truck stop? Yummy. And they make the washers and dryers and things like that. It turned into a business, but it was socialism. The group became known as the Community of True Inspiration. Not your, pietists. Everybody believed in God and was looking for something. Now, there is a community called Modern Times, Utopian, 1851, Brentwood, New York. Believed in individual sovereignty and equitable commerce. Went through the Civil War. Different reasons for their failure. Another one, Robert Owen. The guy was fascinated with New Harmony. We'll look at that. There are a number of new harmonies. Everybody wants to live in harmony. They want to believe in the brotherhood of man, the goodness of man, that God lives in them, and that they're basically good. They don't have that stain of sin. Economic panics, they can plan those things. They'll move the people around They did. And they kept building and rebuilding the cities and faking the history. Rotarian Bay, another utopian in New Jersey. Don't know much about them. Boarding school, they didn't build this. It was there. That's part of the history that it all washes over you at the same time. They needed people in these places, so they put them there. They moved them there and say, this is our utopia. Some were the old world institutions, some were houses where they just built them and said, yep, we're together here. Let's get to milking the cows. It's what the Lord would have us do, looking for a second Eden. I believe all these people were flat earthers. I don't think they had that globe thing really cooking then. Aurora colony. In Dallas, Texas, that Reunion, another one, socialist, French, Belgium, Swiss, Belgium, French, Charlie Fournier. Everybody knew they could do it, and they moved it to you. Uvalde County, there was an unexcusable massacre there where the police let the killer shoot the children and they wouldn't go help. It was absolutely shocking. It seemed like it was one of those false flag fix-em-ups, conspiracies, crazy. Utopias everywhere. Octagon City, that's where the UFC, no, I'm kidding. It was a failed intentional community. That's a utopia. That's a utopian. Vegetarian, utopian. It didn't last long, but they had the Octagon House, and there are a lot of Octagon houses. Just one of those things. I'm into the Octagon House. Who's the Fowler? It's like looking in a mirror sideways. Ghost town now. Silkville, not much of this one. There's the schoolhouse. People probably took the stones and rebuilt them. Another utopian socialism from Fournier. Wow. They had to leave because Napoleon III said, set up a shipping line, said, we can do better, people. We can be better. Better than the Bible. Tommy Hughes, experimental utopian called rugby. Sounds like the sport. The rugby colony. Practiced it, the oldest and firstborn inherit everything. So the second sons, they were jobless and idle. Hughes envisioned rugby as a colony where second sons would have a chance and be free of social and moral ills that plagued them. Christian socialism. The colony would later reject Victorian materialism in favor of Christian socialism. Jesus was a rebel and anarchist. You all know it. Nearest city, Huntsville, Tennessee, spy capital of the world, space, NASA, friendly. Whoa. The land of Shalon, a new Bible land formed in 1884. They wanted to live in peace and not eat meat. Well, they're in the mountains of Las Cruces, right there on the major highway. Ruskin colony. What do you guys got? A cannery operation in a cave. Cooperative. This must be Christian socialists working together, strawberry pickers. That doesn't happen. What is that, a week out of the year, 2 weeks or something? You can get a lot done with that many people picking strawberries, man. Cereal coffee, vapor bath cabinet, chewing gun, belt suspenders. Welcome to your utopia. Get to work. Koreshian. Now there's your David Koresh. It was a utopian formed by Teed. He claims he was the new brother of Jesus or something. The new Messiah now in the world. Okay, people buy these things. They have itching ears. They can't wait for something new. Look, we go on picnics. We have fun. There's girls. We all have hats except for this guy. Cyrus Shepherd, Stone of Israel. There are a lot of harmonies. This one's in Washington. It's not the big one out there. We'll get to that. First, they don't care. Cook them, eat them, bury them, pretend they were never there, take over their land. There's buildings there. You got to have people there to say, this is our true history. Capitalist against the labor, management against the crew, profit sharing. It's always been the thing. Are you treating your workers right? Home colony, isn't that nice? Another one in Washington State. There's a lot of things you could, the Rocky was on the other day talking about how things are weird in that area. He would know. He lives there for 40 years. Nuclear. This town is really in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's right by Utah. It's so hard to get to. It is a lonely, lonely town. Not much of it either. But they must have had a building there. They had to get some people there. So, uranium. Compadre Plateau. Not too many people on the border of Utah and western Colorado. Equality. That's a pretty good calligraphy. Brotherhood of the Cooperative Commonwealth. They funded it. Build some wood sheds, get yourself to work and be good. Don't drink, don't get drunk, don't sleep around, and you don't need the Bible. What kind of God? So it was intentional. Edward Bellamy. Was he one of those authors, famous moralist, utopian novel, looking backwards? So he inspired it. Good writing inspired it. My book doesn't get read, or it would be very inspiring. Very good book. That nuclear was weird. Arden, Delaware. Radical Georgist. That looks weird. Doesn't it look weird? A tax movement. That cat looks mad. Still there. Single tax, some sort of a tax thing. Utopias, everybody's looking for them. Zion, Illinois, the flat earth capital of the United States. Christian Catholic Apostolic. Fake speaking in tongues group who were flat earthers. They kept the town going. It's still there. I'm sure it's ghosting out like all of the other towns. Pestilence, famine, floods, those are what's coming. Freeland, Washington, on a little island or something. Another socialist commune. Friends with the Equality Colony, it sounds like. Huh. Anybody got any questions? 30 years. Hey, it's good to see you, Rocket. Don't forget to like. Please strike the like. How about that? Thank you, Faith and Repentance. You know, I forget to say that. Halicon, experimental. Oh, another novelist. And actually, the book Babbitt by Upton Sinclair, it was one of those things that convinced me I want to be a writer. I want to do something this mind-boggling, earth-shaking. It's not the meat-packing book, but I guess he was kind of a socialist, and I didn't even know it. I was only in 10th grade. What is it? What would that mean? I was like 24 when I was in 10th grade. Yeah, I had to take it 13 times. I'm kidding. Free Acres, unincorporated, still there? Well, where's about the so anyway, residents of Free Acres still got something worked out. James Cagney and his wife Billy, they like to live there in Free Acres. He's a Yankee Doodle dandy, propping up the Coen brothers' connection with FDR in that movie. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy. I'll bet you are. Lano. Lano. Like it's like Ladro. Louisiana. What kind of a cult were you guys? Nothing's here unless it was a cult. You're not going to do it, huh? You're not going to tell me about your cultish activities? Huh. Well, you can't force them to. I guess that's strike one. Roosevelt, New Jersey. Is this was this had to be named in the honor of the FDR? Had to be this was a utopian town. Some of the ones, look at that, a union town, so management, labor. Roosevelt is a historic landmark and is subject of the 1983 Visions of Utopia. Okay. It's not strike two. It's not even a foul ball. Still got almost 1,000 people hanging out there. And you know what they like to do on Friday nights? Stand on the corner and go, FDR, FDR. A restoration colony. Oh, that was the name. It was a number of one of a number of the land grants. King Charles said, "Here you go, the 1600s. You know, it's a reward if you didn't like the Stuarts and you helped King Charles, you get free land. Go kill the Native Americans, and it's free." Province of Carolina, province of Pennsylvania. That's how you start a utopia? Thanks, King. We're going to go live great lives, make you proud. Now, the grand model, so they have a lot more Carolina to work with than you would have thought. This is Illinois, and that's the Mississippi River. It runs down here and it cuts it over here to New Orleans. Oh, look at that, Georgia and all of them. They were trying to sell land like it was theirs. This guy did it. That's John Locke, the great philosopher. He was into money making, scheming, setting up utopias for people. They wanted to go back to the system that they call the ancient constitution, get some fake nobility like that secret Cincinnatus, have those plantations, a form of feudalism, have the happy slaves working until the great fire of, this is the Julian calendar. 1666 is 1711 in the Gregorian calendar. They needed to do that. Wow, Christopher Wren, Robert Hooke, they all had it. Right? They all have their hand in it. Well, you got the idea from the other province. Went to the Mississippi, It's big. Same thing. Went to the. I got a lot. I was into it, man. Ephrathah, Ephrathah Cloister, a religious community, a utopia. They don't. They're not. They're not naming it. They had a distinctive principle: was the seventh day was the true Sabbath. The seventh day dunkers broke off. Huh. That was the first schism. And people are saying, there's no way I'm going to pass up being the seventh day dunker. Women's building, meeting house. Bethlehem Ephrathah. Small little town, but the Lord lived there. It'd be like God of the universe slept here. Old gravestone. See, these pictures sometimes have arrows, but less and less. Look, a utopian cloister of nuns. Looks very Rosicrucian-y. Georgia, Oz, not on my mind. Christian Theophacy. Well, there you go. So predating Madame Blavatsky, she had to build on it, twist it into, well, the Christian part is Jesus is in everybody. Communistic, that's what it means by placing their goods in common, cooperative, capitalism. There's so many different types. This guy looks like who I worked for when I was in college in the 80s. Lars Finson was his name. Hardest working man I could ever imagine. Went to a tongue-talking church, but never spoke in tongues. Jacob Broom, they inspired by Rosicrucians. This man brought Rosicrucian to the United States. It's Christian, mystic, Lutheran, Protestant, came and started building caves, digging out caves, saying it's the end of the world, build yourselves utopias, the Knights of the Golden Dawn, harmony societies. There were a lot of them. So I did have knowledge of the nature of divinity, the origin and purpose of the RJ's worst word. I don't know. He's got a few ones that he does not like at all. Here's a funny word, huh? Limbiculus. Syrian Arab. Gymnosophist. I guess people get smart by working out. Regard food and clothing as detrimental to purity of thought. Oh, wow. In the late 1800s, Blavatsky, she, fake, but people believed her. I believe they could cast spells, do those things, get some demonic help, but they do not have an omniscient, omnipotent, Satan is not. So much weirdness. I got to keep going. I got to muscle through all of these things. So here's a harmony in Pennsylvania. It's another utopian. Still 1,000 people there. Probably have some nice houses. Can't believe that George Washington passed through the area. Wow. Harmony Society. These guys did it. That's how you get the people around. The old Mennonite meeting house. I'm kind of a Mennonite. I'm into that style of Christianity, except with the Alta Trinity. Another New Harmony, Indiana. He's so cute. Look what you could do when you paid them up. They all look good then, don't they? Our downtown revitalization project is the best thing in the whole world. That's why you could buy something on Amazon for 20 cents and they'll want you to buy it for $5 in their downtown boutique. Well, that's quite a difference. What you see, what you get, and what you were promised. But there are buildings like that. Utopians, they did it. These guys did it. Is that not Abraham Lincoln or Carl Sandburg? Not the pictures again of the road signs. Zoar, Ohio. Not much of a utopian, but it was founded by radical pietists. Free the radical pietists from Germany, Christian dissenters, okay? Named after the biblical village that Lot and his family said, isn't that a small city? Can't I go there? And God said, go there, but now. Funny, huh? Made him hurry up. Another utopian, Harmony Society. Where was this one? Okay, Pennsylvania. They had a few in that state. New Harmony, Indiana. We looked at that. I must have pulled that one up twice. Nashaba. What'd you call me? Francis Fanny Wright initiated this one in 1825 to educate and emancipate slaves. So in the present day Germantown, Tennessee, a Memphis startup. Later, they tricked people into Liberia, which meant they loaded you onto big passenger ships and drove you to smelting things, and they melted them for their metal and spread their bones over the railroad tracks. Not much of a utopia, but they would have given it some more time, but it had a demise. It went away. Look at this one. The United Order, Mormon, United Order of Enoch. That figures that Enochians would end up with the Mormon type of a situation. Based on, these type of situation with their multiple wives and sex fiendness. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a word. Joseph Smith here, I need more women. I started this in the Freemasons and I demand more women. Yeah, I'm mocking you. They're not Christians. It's not even close. Another gospel of Jesus Christ. That just tells you right away, not a Christian book. Look at this town. Oh, it's a man. Bernhard Muller. Count de Leon. He could talk people into come and build me a utopia. Claimed to be in possession of the Philosopher's Stone. I thought it was at the North Pole. That's what Jason Jack was implying. Nacogdoches, they don't care where you get it. Just keep it moving. I got the Philosopher's Stone. Oberlin, Ohio, Utopia. For big music people there. Birthplace of the Anti-Saloon League and the Hall-Hucult process for smelting aluminum. Yikes. Fluoride salts. Well, that's where your first people getting poisoned, I bet. I'm not a fan of the fluoride salts. They put the fluoride, salicylic fluoridic acid. I've heard that's the active ingredient in Prozac, but it's the part that scares me is that the fluoridic part of salicylic fluoridic acid, that's fluoride. They're not dealing with their problems. They're forgetting them. What problem? Back to the Lycarium style. The name of a gymnasium. Something's going on. I gotta have a drink of coffee or something. So Napoleon, when he wasn't taking over the world and being fake, he was setting up utopias, Lyceum, school systems that included exercising. Huh. Anyway, a lot of people at utopias were into exercising, and I think the Brook Farms might have been like that. They were a utopian experiment, communal living, joint stock company, promised participants a portion of the farm's profit for an equal share of work. I'll bet that worked out wonderfully. Huh. They had an ambitious structure called the philanstry. Huh. Well, that means they found buildings and they put them in it. It's all fake. And of course, they're going to morph into the Transcendental Club, worshiping anything but Jesus. Wow. This is not how you become a light to the Gentiles, people. This is how the Gentiles, after Satan is loosed, we've been guided in our history, set up by, look, that could be Donald Trump if he, combed his hair different. They prop the people up. People buy into it. Look at, here we go. So here is Charlie, the Fournierism, based on a belief in the inevitability that eventually people are going to realize they have to work together. It's a part, if you want a human future. Well, the human future is coming to an end in 20 years, and it's going to be a nightmare until then. If you don't get your mind around that and realize, where's my best chance to survive? In the shadow of Los Angeles? Or somewhere where, it'll be a lot harder and your internet's not going to work, but you claim that you're ready to sell everything and follow Jesus. Well, in North America, the phalanx is, secular socialist commune, Colts Neck, Mammoth County, New Jersey. This one was 1843. Go West, young man, after Horace Greeley. He was the leading figure of these guys. The great manipulator of people. This plaster and lath, these things, they last so well. So much better than drywall. Kit houses, I believe. There was a time when people were building things on the graves of, this was, the charismatic Christianity. That's what practical charismatic theology, what is it? Subset of Christian theology. Okay. Someone said the four key concepts. This is practical. What is charismatic? Practical. What's going on? Why is it going on? Why are they faking, that Candace Owen is figuring out these things by herself when it's taking 8 months when it was, you can figure it out in 40 hours. Christian identity, believers have been able to affect this level of cultural change only by knowing their true spiritual identity. And they end up with Paula White being an advisor to Donald Trump saying, go to war, where if I go to war, that's the holy ground. Wow, Hopedale. Milford, Massachusetts. Who knew that Milford was started as a utopian committee? Cat Ballou believed he could create it. I'm kidding. His name wasn't Cat. It was Aiden. And it's, didn't believe in drinking. Didn't believe in slavery. wanted women's rights and spiritualism, which together those mean free love. 14 years after the land, he went bankrupt, but the women didn't care. They got to vote 100 years later. Well, not the black women, the white women. These universalist beliefs about Christianity believed that Jesus Christ had made it possible for people to live a good life on earth. And so this community was instituted to be an example. It's not going to work, Hopedale. What is this first fruits thing? Fruitlands Transcendental, another utopian agricultural commune. Come here and help us grow it. Oh, how about Little Women, Little House on the Prairie, Louisa May Alcott. Yeah, Cole, prop up. Daddy's a Mason. It's the insanity of these nonsense. Utopian. It's like looking in a mirror, except for all that long hair. Hey, you hippie. Look at Italy's community. Another one in upstate, 1843. Noted abolitionist, became a community leader, set him to work on the print shop, sawmill. Some worked at the farm. Reverted to theism and the Whig Party, which was a precursor to the Republicans. Okay, wrote a short essay establishing the community and its failure to attributing its failure to human nature. So, I guess he got off of that. You could just, they might, so far as governments are concerned, do very well if men were angels and angels gods, but human nature is too low. They are too selfish, too ignorant for relations so exalted. They are busy being horn dogs day and night, is another way of putting it. Male and female. Another one of the Sodus Bay. We have 3 more after this. They're an official branch of the Society of Believers in Christ's Second Appearance. And somehow this got all worked up into where in 1948, the Seventh-day Adventists came up because everybody believed that Jesus was coming back in 1948. That's where dispensationalists. But these guys didn't care because they didn't really believe in Jesus in the Bible anyway. But the people that were faking believe in the Bible had the same time schedules of fake it. Get the Kellogg's out there. Get the sugar in the Post Toasties and the Cheerios. I think I looked at the Shaker Bay. Now, the burned over district where Joseph Smith and the Mormons start, they called it burned over because people stopped sending evangelists there because they fell for everything for so long. Eventually, they didn't believe anything anymore. It wasn't there. They were into the occult, seer stones, like how Joseph Smith claimed he found his things. Wow. But it was all fake, they were really at the same time immigrating people to dig the Erie Canal while they were drunk. Ripon, Wisconsin, RJ. How about that? Home of the Little White Schoolhouse and the Republican Party. It started Charlie Fournier, communist, founded Ripon College. Look at that. This is such an interesting area. I lived in northern Illinois, but I spent a lot of time. The church I was part of had property in up around the Wisconsin Dells. The original Utopia, Ohio, founded in 1944 by his man, named it Utopia. Not much left. People like to talk about it. The individualist anarchist colony. How about that? So many different histories had to be tied together. Alphadelphia? I like the name of that. Another one of Charlie's places, Galesburg, Michigan. At its peak, the community likely had around 300 members, and the common property was almost 44,000 when it disbanded in 1848. Probably mad that the rapture didn't happen. Wow. So the last thing is a Bible verse. The necessary things seemed good indeed to the Spirit. The following requirements. The Bible gives us requirements about 4 things you're not allowed to do. And the people that are liars who, want to tell you about worshiping on Saturday and all these other things, keep the whole law. The New Testament talks about them as much as Wikipedia talks about utopias. They're the bad guys. God made no distinction between the Gentiles and the Jews. That's why it seemed good to the apostles and the elders to send the following letter, because we heard that false people went out saying that Gentiles have to. The Jews kept the law. They never. The Jews always had to keep the law. Only the Gentiles didn't have to keep the law. If you were born a Jew, you kept the law, but you believed in Jesus Christ. They were unsettling their mind, twisting scripture, itching ears. But he told them. And we know now that all of these make sense. And they called them requirements. Abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols and from blood, from what has been strangled, and sexual immorality. Now we know in the book of the Revelation, it mentions those things, saying, you're doing what Jezebel wanted you to do. I pointed this out before. In verse 21, Paul's keeping the law. Gentiles are not. What are they going to do? Paul, you take these 4 men who are under a vow, you go with them, shave your heads, purify yourself along with them, pay their expenses, and the Jews will know that they're lying about you because they said, Paul, we're being told that you teach all the Jews among the Gentiles to forsake Moses. Well, that would have been a problem. They weren't supposed to do that. The Gentiles didn't have to forsake Moses. They never knew him. The only thing they had to do were these 4. Here they're mentioned again because they're necessary things. After they're confirming Jews still keep the law, Gentiles don't, and there's a letter that are their requirements. Are you doing that, Paul? Yes, sir, I am doing that. In the Revelation, we see these people, synagogue of Satan. They're Pergamon. It's a place where Satan dwells. Well, for crying out loud, they're teaching Balaam, to dress their girls up and seduce the men. Hey, why don't I go to church showing cleavage today? Sure. And wear some short shorts. They put a stumbling block. Wait, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols? Well, that's breaking a requirement. Practice sexual immorality? Well, that's breaking it. Well, that's the teachings of the people who believe in Santa Claus, Saint Nick. And this isn't the only verse that church that is warned about. You know, for crying out loud, you're doing the Jezebel thing, eating food that's been strangled, sacrificed to idols. We know now that food that is strangled has that adrenochrome thing loosed into their bloodstream. That's what they're all about. The inclination of what's written on my heart, of which obviously 10,000 and plus videos later, I want you to believe that you can trust it if it's written on your heart. Jesus Christ did rise from the dead. He's the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. He's the light to the Gentiles. He's also incarnate in flesh because in reality, he's everywhere. Inside the firmament, outside the firmament. God, he's a spirit. God is a spirit. We're going to metamorphose into spirit world. This is a test. And it's very, very important to be on the right team. Know Jesus so that he knows you know him and he knows you. It's the saddest thing and the part about the Bible. Many walk away when they hear, what? I chose God. He didn't choose me. You don't understand the analogy of being born again. You didn't choose your mom and dad. You didn't choose what point in history you'd be born, how smart you would be, whether you'd be handsome and then lose your hair or just be short, fat, and bald from the get-go. Yeah, nobody chooses their own life. When you get born again, you're changed. Suddenly you notice the things you used to love, now you hate. The things you used to hate, now you love. You find yourself on your knees thinking it's you've studied it, you've come to the conclusion that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. He's called you, he's forgiven your sins. The Bible's true. You must confess it with your mouth. Well, that seems like a good idea, but you've been known from before the foundation of the earth. You've been called, you've been chosen, you've been elected to have two births. One of the water, one of the spirit. Well, many get a call. Few are chosen. They're not faithful. It's too hard. They turn away. That's what we have to fight. It's never going to be a utopia. It's going to be constant vigilance. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past. For the mud flood was Armageddon. We got the orphan train brain, but we have the proof. We know the veil's been lifted. There is no excuse for lack of faith. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakamain. Goodbye in Esperanto. Anybody? That's how I like to say goodbye.